And welcome to another edition of Dynamics Fortnite Fridays.
where we cover everything dynamics, great and small. So, Bart, what's tomorrow?
May the 4th be with you.
Awesome. I just love that.
I love that too.
I know. So,
For all the geeks in our
I know. It's like,
sphere.
so, yeah, I'm going for a bike ride tomorrow. It's kind of like a 50 whatever mile ride, an organized ride. And it's like I was looking for like a stormtrooper shirt, for me and my buddies to wear. I thought I just couldn't find the right matching one. So I'm super geeked about it. But anyways, it's like, so which kind of brings us to the dad jokes. You got anything for me today?
Well, of course.
Okay.
So, if you were looking for a way to describe a typical meal for the Wookiee family, what would you typically say it would be categorized as?
Not meat and potatoes. I don't know. Oh God, I don't know. I don't know.
A little chewy.
Oh man, that's terrible but funny. I like that. So that's just awful. So I got a
What do you
couple
have?
awful ones for you. Okay, not topical for that, but it's like I thought these were pretty funny. So what does a weasel order at a bar?
Weasels don't order at bars.
Yeah, they do. They order pop.
Pop, pop goes the weasel.
Yeah, okay, yeah, see,
Oh,
that's awful, isn't it?
nice.
That tickled me, so I had to say that. I got another one I thought was
All right,
pretty good
all right.
too, right? So, okay, who was the knight that everybody that was surprised that showed up at the battle? Or
Silent
nobody
Night?
expected. Surprise.
The surprise.
Yeah, that's pretty awful.
Okay.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I should have stepped with pop. Okay, okay. Hope the content's good again, right? Just we got to cover up for that joke.
Hope
All right,
everybody
go
got
ahead.
at least a little bit of a groaning smile somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
it's
All right,
terrible.
well, let's
Okay.
start off with an interesting new feature of Power Pages. So, with this advent of copilots and generative AI, a lot of folks are saying, how can I just let this AI reason across a bunch of my documents to make a chatbot that people can just ask questions about content
Yeah.
that's in those documents? And well, that
Bart, are
works
you
great.
sharing?
And oh, you
Oh,
know what? I probably should share. Thank you for the
yeah, yeah,
reminder.
yeah.
That might make the
Otherwise,
content
it's
go a
like
little bit
you have to
smoother.
verbally be graphical there. So,
All right, all right. So
all right.
here's what I'm talking about. So we decided in Power Pages that there are certain scenarios where actually having some ways on a website to do something similar, not just in a chat area, but actually generate an FAQ page about all this content that's stored away in documents. And you could also have a little bot on there where people could ask questions as a side copilot, but this is doing a similar thing to what all those bots are doing in the chat interface, but just making a website that has all that FAQ information from all the stuff that's sitting in documents out there. So I thought that was an interesting thing that our product team decided to take a little advantage of all these large language models in a new way. Next one, a lot of people should be quite excited about. So interacting with SAP programmatically is something that we have been able to do in the Power Platform for quite some time, but it was always with some legacy interfaces that you had to understand how to interact with the BAPI interface and do all kinds of other stuff to make sure that you are authenticating through data gateways to get at the data and all those kind of things. Well, we have brought a new version of an SAP connector out that is in public preview now, so a great one to start playing with that actually talks to SAP's OData endpoint. So that OData endpoint is a much more modern endpoint that will work without having to understand RFIs and BAPIs and all those things. You can just query the SAP data the way you would from most other modern REST-based APIs. So should be a lot simpler to try to do some interesting things, assuming that your OData endpoint is put in a place where we can utilize it. Well, there's two paths there. So if you have done something with an API management solution to publish that SAP OData API to the public internet, obviously with security around it, the Power Platform connector should be able to just connect right up to that. No data gateway needed. If you don't have it in a public spot and that API is still only on premises behind your firewall, then you can always still use the data gateway to get at that and start taking advantage of it. And the rest of this is just talking a little bit about how to authenticate and what kinds of things you can do. But super excited about the folks that are doing SAP work in Power Platform having this new option to try to make that even simpler than what we had done in the past. Next topic, Copilot for PowerFX. This kind of goes two different ways. That the Copilot is there now to look at a PowerFX complex statement and just say, tell me what this is doing, and it'll give you a natural language explanation of what is going on in that PowerFX formula so that it's understandable. So you pop open somebody else's code base and you're looking at it and you don't understand exactly what they stitched together, that this should help make that a little easier to understand. And of course, it'll go the other way as well, where you can just type in a natural language of what do I want this PowerFX command to do, and it will actually then create the PowerFX command. And I thought it was kind of an interesting way of bringing that forward, because we've had this ability to comment code for a long time in Power Platform, so that you could sort of make comments about coding just like you would in any other coding tool. But now, as you are writing those comments out, you can maybe start just by writing the comment, and once you stop typing, it'll say, oh, with that comment, maybe I should try to generate some PowerFX just based on what the natural language description is, and it will then try to stitch it together so that you can execute it. So I think that's an interesting way to bring it forward in terms of user interface. It's fairly intuitive. So anyway, that is there, and then there's also a new way to get some Copilot help right in the brand new kind of context-sensitive inline command bar. So take advantage of that if that's going to help you as well in working in Power Apps. So lots of new stuff there. This one is a really nice new security capability. So when you want to keep all network traffic from a Power Platform perspective behind your protected firewall system, then you'll probably have some firewall stuff set up in the cloud in your, like Azure or AWS or Google or wherever you've got it. And this is really pretty centric around the Azure capability so far. But if you are using that connectivity in the cloud and you've also got your local network, that we now have a way to secure Dataverse plugins and all the other data in a tenant. Well, I'm sorry, no, this is just Dataverse plugins. I've got another thing coming up that will be a little broader outside of just Dataverse plugins. But this way, when you put a plugin in Dataverse that is making outbound connectivity to some sort of Azure resource that it is calling as part of that plugin execution, that you can restrict its ability to get at only things within subnets without having to do anything, else to confine that to be working only within your network rules that you've put together. So we've got a couple of different descriptions of how you might do some of those things, and the Dataverse Unbound plugin action is the main one that we are looking at working through when you look at this video. It's actually not a particularly well-produced video, but it does have some good content in it. So if you had a need to write Dataverse plugins that can only traverse your protected networks, this is now possible to do. 4, pipelines. So pipelines have been around for a while, and the new feature of pipelines that we call Pipelines for All that has come out fairly recently in preview format, where no installation of anything was needed. You don't need a separate environment. You don't have to install anything. It's just be a maker with a license in a managed environment, and you would have the ability to use this Pipelines for All capability just kind of right out of the box. Well, we're making them a little more robust now that they are generally available, and you can make them multi-stage. Instead of just 2 environments, you can push solutions between a few and have like a dev test prod, all with this Pipelines for All capability. And you can reuse them. And once you've built a pipeline setup, you can kind of move them into other places, and then you can force linkages from where it was originally built to someplace else if need be, to kind of change what like the host environment is going to be from either Pipelines for All to a dedicated pipelines environment, or back and forth depending on what you need to do. So all this is still stuff that you can give permissions to do or not. You can construct the dedicated pipelines and not let people use pipelines for all if you wanted to do that, but it's got all kinds of good functionality to try to make doing proper lifecycle management of your Power Platform assets even easier. That's kind of the whole goal of all of this. That functionality I was just talking about a second ago with being able to do things in your entire tenant that will protect your data. Well, there is always an encryption algorithm that is keeping all data encrypted at rest as well as in transit in everything that we do in Power Platform. But Microsoft manages those keys. We think we do a pretty good job of it. We rotate them very religiously to make sure that you are not setting on any static keys. But if you would like to take that into your own hands and not be working on a Microsoft managed key, but on your own customer managed key, you put that in your Azure Key Vault and you turn it on for an environment, and then the Dataverse data will be encrypted with that key. And the Cloudflow executions and the app definitions and all the other sort of assets that are in that environment will be managed and encrypted with your encryption key. So it kind of puts all these extra layers of protection across all the stuff that's going on, even at rest, in your environment, not just in Dataverse, but in other places as well, to keep that data even more secure. And that gives you the ability to lock and unlock environments, but just be really careful. If you do lock one and you don't have your secret anymore, it will not be unlockable by us. And even when you have the secret, it's not unlockable by you without putting a support ticket in. So just kind of be aware of some of that. If you decide it's important to lock an environment for whatever reason, you should kind of use that as your last resort. I'm pulling the ripcord number 2 because ripcord number 1 didn't work and I still feel like I'm at risk type thing. So, but it's nice that the capability is there for the people in those regulated industries or others that just want extra layers of security. So I've got 2 different links here. One of them talks about how that works in the Power Automate space. The other one talks about how it works in the Power App space. The important part here is you do this at an environment level and it works across both those platforms and the Dataverse environment all at one time when you do a customer managed key. Power Automate Desktop for our RPA or robotic process automation stuff got some nice new functionality as well. So UI elements are at the core of what you have to define because you're looking at a web page or what's going on the PC, and you're picking out different things on that page or on that PC's user interface in order to make the automation do what it needs to do. Well, the new capability that just came out in this release related to that is you can make a collection of those for commonly used applications by someone who actually is pretty versed in Power Automate Desktop and what kinds of definitions of those assets that it's looking for as a repository of UI elements. And this can cross web ones and desktop ones. And you put them into this collection, and that collection is now transportable, and you can share the collection with other users in your tenant so that it makes it a lot easier to have somebody who knows what they're doing build the library and then share that library out and say, anybody else who's using SAP, here's the collection of icons or UI elements that is going to help make that way easier for you to just get right to productivity. In Power Automate Desktop, you can also now just tell it you would like a description of whatever had been built. You don't even have to open it. You can just do that, and Copilot will go look at the functionality of it and make a description of your flow that can help your admins do a little better. License auto claim is now available for those of you who use that. There are some new SAP automations if you are working with the SAP user interface, and new actions for Excel are there. So lots of new stuff there. And finally, the selector builder window, which has been around for a little while and is super helpful in being able to get at exactly which part of that UI element you care about, can be opened from either within the UI element or the web action element area to be able to sort of get more fine-tuned at what you are grabbing for user interface stuff. A couple new things also out there for Python and PowerFX enabling. So lots of new capabilities in the desktop environment within the last month. And then here's the summary for all the stuff that came out in April for Power Apps. So being able to do things with unused or removed users out of your Dataverse environment is a nice thing it's been around, but we've enriched it a little bit more. So take a look at the article if you want to see some of the nuanced things that have changed. For being able to think about all the various ways that Copilot Studio and the rest of the pre-built Copilots are keeping your data safe, watch this video. It's actually a really good video. It's only like 8 minutes long, and they're having fun, of course, but they actually do talk about how we're logging the information to make sure you can go audit what's happening, what we're doing under the covers to try to make sure it is always protected and only looking at your data and never getting out to the public internet and all that kind of stuff, and why you should be able to trust everything that's going on. It's just good to have an explanation of how that comes together. Intelligent recommendations in the Power Platform Admin Center for license assignment. It is now out there. So if you are an admin that would like to sort of at least take a peek at that and see if it's going to give you some interesting guidance. Right now, it's Power Apps centric. Power Automate is coming soon. Don't know exactly what soon means. I'm assuming when we say early next year, what they're actually thinking is Microsoft's fiscal year, which starts in July. That's my assumption here. I don't think they're talking about 2025 when they say early next year, but I could be wrong. I guess we'll find out as time moves forward. We've got interesting things with generative AI capabilities inside of your apps. So how to prompt appropriately to get things to work better from within the app interface. There are several other videos here. This other one about what is being done in the solution import space. If you do much with ALM, watch that one. Also a really good listen. And we are doing quite a few things to enhance the performance of how that works in the modes where it needs to work better because they're the recommended modes. So we should be seeing a lot of those improvements within the next couple of weeks, and it's probably worth understanding. I already talked about the PowerFX capabilities. We talked last show about escaping double quotes on the column names. The SharePoint list import experience, I think we've already covered. And then all the stuff that is always updated across all of our documentation is a really handy list just to make sure you're somewhat keeping up with those things. Last thing on the Power Apps summary stuff is the Power Pages Maker Copilot for helping you generate the page is now generally available. So use it at scale in production scenarios. And there's a nice list of a lot of things you can do for making an entire site, making just a web page, changing your themes, ask questions about it, generating text and images, forms. The copilots can do lots of specific things or really general things depending on what you want to do to get started. And lots of guidance along the rest of this. So take advantage for those of you who are using Power Pages to let Copilot do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, at least to scale it out as a starting point, and you'll always edit it. It just makes the stuff in the editor light up quickly to get you going. So a couple more things now in the customer engagement. I'm not actually even going to click into this one, or probably many of these, but in field service, we have had this work order summarization capability for a while and been hugely popular because it really gives those field service workers just what they need at the time they need it to. Oh yeah, now here's what I need to go do. Well, we are now allowing admins to get under the covers and not just have that be a black box, but to tell the Copilot what things are important to you out of your work orders to make sure those things get included in the summarization. And if it's not important and it was, adding that stuff, that you can kind of take that stuff out. So giving you the ability to give the Copilot guidance is a new feature there. Guides for all the assistants within the virtual space of how to do various processes, been around for a while. Copilot in guides is going to be supremely helpful for people that are trying to do those operations, to have this assistant to be able to quickly ask it questions about knowledge that's stored in a bunch of PDFs in your knowledge repository or whatever else while you're trying to do the work. It's really nice use cases that are kind of put forward in this. The only thing that's a little bit of a bummer is this blog post came out and describes it all, but it's still in private preview. So you can't go out and actually start playing with it unless you're in that private preview. I expect it to go public preview very quickly, but I don't know exactly what those dates are going to be. Power Pages Copilot, so the built-in one that you can just say, I want to turn it on my website, that will give the Copilot the ability to have a non-regular chatbot. So you don't have to go build it in Copilot Studio. You just turn on the Power Pages Copilot. And that actually ends up being a Copilot Studio bot. And because of that, it's really easy to let that have an escalation path from the built-in Copilot right to your D365 Digital Contact Center, because we in the Contact Center are a channel that it's easy to have a Copilot Studio built bot hand off to the Contact Center. So just made that even easier in the configuration of letting that be a handoff if you want to make that available for your users, where the Copilot doesn't give them something they're happy with. They want to talk to a person or chat with a person, it can escalate. And then the last one is the agent call quality survey. So if you're using our customer service contact center functionality and you would like to make it automatic to have it do a call quality survey, and this isn't of your customers, so this isn't trying to get you better NPS scores or things like that. It's surveying your agents on what's working and not working about how the contact center is set up. And you can control kind of what those surveys are and sort of how often they pop up. But once it is logged, one other important thing to be aware of is it is logging all of the survey results in Azure monitoring solutions, not in the Dataverse. So you do need to put some log analytics capabilities out there if you want to actually go look at those survey results that are being fed in to do the measurement and analytic reporting on them. Little nuance that I didn't expect, but that's how we're doing it. And Dan, I went longer than I thought, but I think I'm ready to turn it over to you to move on with your content.
Really good content there, Bart. Right. So yeah, I mean, like, let's take the time necessary. We're not going to call this a 30-minute show anymore.
I agree.
Yeah, it's roughly a 30-minute.
It's still a goal, but it's a very loosely enforced goal.
Exactly. It's like, I think we've done that like once or twice in the last 2 years, maybe.
Exactly.
I only have 3 things, but they're dense. They're very dense. So can you see my screen, Emily?
Answer is yes.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna go. It's like it's a 10.0.40. We went from nearly 12 to to 9 to 8. Now we're down to 4 updates per year, and April's one of those big updates. So I'm gonna split them up. So I'm gonna do commerce and finance today. I'll do cross-functional and supply chain on the next show, and then we'll see if I can fit in the updates that we have with the project operations too. And of course, Business Central is not going to be left out in the cold as well. But so anyways, just so you know, so this is an important one for the commerce and the finance and the 10.0.40. So let's kick it off with the commerce. And there's some nice changes in commerce. So first of all, with point of sale. So before we'd have to have a barcode to print it out to use with the scanner, or actually that comes a little bit later. But no, there's a native scanning for the mobile app here for Android and right now. So you don't have to have an external third-party app, and so you can actually use just a phone, scan it with the phone on there, get all that information, and have that license back. We also add some streamlined workflow for adding the items to a transaction page. On this one, it's the workflow for items out of the cart. You can display these items from the product being added. You can see it in the product or search page. You can bypass the dialogue and just make it a little tighter as you go through that, through the point of sale system. The next thing is, you ever been to a store and you don't have inventory? We can look up inventory for different stores. Yeah, we have it in our Woodbury store. We have it in our Fargo's, whatever it might be. And then they'll have to go look up the phone number or something. They just can't give you that information. Now this actually display that phone number on the point of sale, and so they can give that information to the customer, whether they're the sales rep can do that. There's also some reset button on the grids if you end of transactions. So what this one does is it's designed to be on the first tab when a transaction is completed. It's suspended or voided. You can actually reset to the screen the way that you want it to, which just kind of simplifies that. Again, we're just trying to make it easier for the people in the store. The next thing is, configure display of search results, right? Before it was in a list view, some people actually wanted it in a card view. So it's like I actually have the card of the picture and a little less information, a little less dense on that. So we can configure that for how the search is going to come up. Also, point of sale, there's a self-checkout, which is a self-checkout kiosk. So if you go to Target or Walmart, you see these all over the places, right? But the ironic thing is they're starting to realize it's like, the shrinkage problem is too high, and they're starting to pull back on some of those. Just FYI, I was reading that last week in a journal. There's also faster checkout for optimized payment flows. So what this does is like optimize the interface, whether it's a cash or a credit card payment flows, and make sure that there's just a single window for that to accept that payment, right? And it also brings us like, if you want to pay the exact payment amount options on that, and then also smart denominations. So it's like, here's the payment. It's like, it's $50.50. It's like, do we accept 100? What's the change? Things like that, right? Actually get that. So the ones that the shoppers are likely to use. The next thing is kind of another one of those kind of no-brainer. I'm surprised we didn't have this a little bit earlier, but it's the Adyen tap to pay on the phone. So that's the uses the NFC or the near field communications. You can just tap your phone on that for the pay with the iPhone. So some of the iPhone stuff has been kind of slow in coming around, but now that's available in 10.0.40. Also, non-recurrent payment tokens. So this is actually the tokens for the credit cards, and so they can get in there and get like a pre-auth and then an authorization for that payment. So we've streamlined that, right? For non-recurring payments. So it's like updates the process with a single authorization payment, the authorization adjustments. So you can actually increase or decrease the original authorization instance. So for instance, if you're at a restaurant and they'll leave a tip, so versus the original amount, they'll accept like a 15 or 20% tip on top of that. And you can also have expiration or expiry parameters on that, set on the card type or the level of that. And lastly, for commerce, it's like we can provide multiple shipping addresses and delivery dates on a single line, a single order, right? So if you like, grandma buys something for all the different grandkids, with like 3 different locations that they have to send it out to, that she buys on a POS. We can actually have that multiple different orders and different notes and delivery instructions. Leave it on the front door. Make sure you put it in the garage, whatever it might be on that order. So quite a bit on commerce. Some really good stuff on commerce. Now on finance and supply chain. So first of all, the BPP, business performance planning, right? Some new documentation on installing the video. So we released this at the very end of the year last year, right? But it's super powerful because the business performance planning, it's like you can do all the forecasting, do all the update on your business performance, and there's a write back actually into finance from that. But it tells you about the prerequisites to get all this installed. You can find the actually application on AppSource, install on AppSource, and it's got to be installed through the PPAC, right? The Power Platform Admin Center, and not through Lifecycle Services or not anything else, right? So just be aware of that. This is kind of a Dataverse centric component and a Canvas app component on that. So talks about
Interesting how we're fusing these platforms together for all this stuff lately.
I'm loving it, right? And then it's like we're actually just going to one platform, Bart. It's like instead of I've been talking about this for a couple of years. It's like, okay, lifecycle services that's kind of being deprecated. We're not adding anything, and everything's moving over to PPAC. And it's just one unified, easier to use. Did I say that out loud? One easier to use Power Platform Admin Center, right? So the last thing on this is I'll just mention, it's like, you have to obtain the Entra access token, right, to make sure that it works. It talks about the error if you don't get that. So anyways, just on that, if you haven't started working and playing with that, you'll want to do this because this is really powerful analytics that are built right in the system, right? So let's kind of go back to the the finance in 10.0.40, and there's a lot here. So I'll spend a few minutes on this, but there's a lot of good features and updates that we've added to this. So first of all, we've added a bank account lifecycle management, which is just a workflow for a bank account activation, any modifications or deactivations, right? And it takes the account change history on that for any auditing on that, or the It also has protected fields, and there's also triggers if somebody like changes something for an approval modification workflow. So it doesn't automatically just change it; it goes in that automated workflow into that. The next thing is customer and vendor netting. I've talked about this over several shows over the last few months, and so we had customer and vendor netting, but it actually did an AP and an AR journal back and forth. Now we do it with a netting journal just to make it a whole lot easier. So my customers are going to love that. There's also improved performance and efficiency in the sales invoice. So one of my clients here, as like I said, actually is in the Twin Cities based. Love these guys. They're over in Bloomington. They do huge rebuilds on these machineries, and they had some slow processing, but like on all these invoices, especially comes from a project, because they just had like huge amounts of that. This is going to greatly increase that performance of that. So that's a nice feature. You know, it's like the power of the cloud, right? There's also some post document with distribution splitting. So what this does is like with these huge documents, it splits the distribution into the individual process batches, so it prevents the memory overflow, you know, with super long invoice in the handle. So again, part of that improvement in the sales, this is actually AP invoicing versus the sales invoicing. So another thing, just a small feature, but it makes a difference for some of our customers in the payable. We've extended the invoice number from 20 characters to 50 characters. So if you get these invoices with these long numbers, more than 20 on those, we're now viable for that. The next thing is export documents or export attachments and document management. This is something that's been kind of slow on with like all the like attachments and stuff to all these different documents, but now this allows export fields and metadata that is attached to those records to be exported in document management and manage that. A new credit and collections workspace, the collections coordinator workspace to centralize all the collections components, and that's an overview of the accounts. It has all the activities and the balances on that. So a nice efficient workspace for those in credit and collections. Then there's also a customer balance statistics deletion job. Okay, I'm not gonna spend time on this. There's huge amount of information for the customer statistics, and it's like the old information. We just want to make sure it's performance, so let's just get rid of it. Um, and then another thing is the customer account rename maintenance. So we've had customer account rename that we'd be able to do, but it wasn't super efficient. Now, especially with all the stuff that we're doing with dual write, with the Power Platform and the Dataverse, right, it's getting more complicated. So we actually have a new maintenance pages to actually streamline and make sure that we have data consistency across the board on that. Consolidation templates. So consolidations, we have multiple different companies. We have to roll it up, consolidate, and do the eliminations, you know, so you don't double dip on things. But now there's a template. So the first time you run it, it will actually, you can have that as a template. And from then on, it's like you'll have those consolidations available as the template. And it'll actually do all the runs, the reruns, and all the reversals into that. So and the last major feature is it's like we have a reverse journal component. So it's a single step. So some journals can have thousands or tens of thousands of lines, right? And what will this allow you to do is like it'll split those large journals and multiple journals on that. And it's like anything over 1,000 lines on that automatically split into multiple journals. So it's performant and make sure that we have all the associated journals reversed from that. So those are the major features. There's been also some enhancements that we've made. So first of all, it's like importing a bank statement. So we got the header and the lines are available, and a bunch of stuff on modern bank reconciliation. So first of all, we have the matching ID. Then we have the matching type field for the different types. So an example of that would be if you're matching a bank doc or generating a voucher and matching those two things up together. Another thing is um, the bank statements. Like can be posted as a GL, and then we have the relevant company information that shows on the customer or the company transaction page onto that. Let's see, vendor invoice. Okay, center. This is a preview, but you know you want to take a look at this. But this allows you to drill down on detailed invoices from the list pages. All right, and then just um, then select the subtitle number and the vendor invoices. It's like basically it's just like it's a work center for accounts payable. We've had a lot of that for the collections and the accounts receivable, but now we're moving over and doing some work on the payable side of that. The next thing is this is for the invoice capture, and this is kind of a nice feature. So I worked on this, or I was working with like another one of my colleagues. It's like, they get the invoice, but they on the line items per item for that AP invoice, they wanted to get the different dimensions, and we couldn't do that right out of the box. Now we're allowed to do that, so we can actually it defaulted to the header level. Now we can do the line level for the financial dimensions, whether it be work center, business unit, whatever work dimensions that you work on that. So that's now supported. A few things on tax. So so on tax, we have now the invoice field is automatically posted on the sales tax transaction. So we didn't have that before. And then the next thing is kind of important was this by unit calculation. Before we'd have the tax unit to measure. So if you tax in it by each, it would look at that by each. But what if you sell a carton that's 12 eaches? Well, now the tax will actually do that conversion. So it'll do the calculated by conversion. So it's like, okay, it's like we have to tax it at 12 level on that instead of a single unit. There's some pull-in for SAD document integrations, and that's just not really mournful or verklempt. It actually means single admin documents. That's the third bad dad joke that I've had today, by the way, Bart. so
There's
those
no
are
limit. There's no limit.
I thought that tickled me, so I had to see it. But now it's like those single administration documents are available for the integrated with the tax calculation too. The next thing is like the universal tax rate API. I talked about that a couple months ago. I think it was 10.0.38. I was talking about those tax APIs. Well, what we didn't have was it's like something to manage the error settings. So we have a new support in that API to be able to manage by different vendors, just like our partner that we have, ISVs, to be able to handle those message codes. Couple other things, customer payment in invoice journals. So payment journals, so it's like they have multiple lines. We can actually look at the status that are undisputed or disputed ones. It's like, and just actually make it just faster and more efficient as you go through. And the last thing that I have to talk about today is like the customer agent report. So the customer agent report is like, okay, how long is what's my aging from 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 150 days or over, right? For an example, right? So how my customers doing? So that takes a lot of processing power. Well, we improved the calculations on that customer agent report. So it's just going to run a lot faster. So again, it's like there's additional information. You can look at that up, but there's quite a bit on that finance today. So a lot of good features. A lot of my customers should be really happy with that. And remember, it's like next DFF, I'm going to go over the supply chain, and I'll go over the cross-platform improvements onto that. So that's all I have today. And so I think, Bart, we usually go about, okay, solution updates. You want to be able to scan through those. Make sure you update within the Power Platform Admin Center. And some places you want to look at some more detailed information that are available to you. So
there are lots of updates out there in the PPAC. Yeah. Again, every time there's a whole bunch, but seemed like there was even more than usual.
Yeah.
There's a lot for all the admins of the F&O instances to really keep up with and be ready for this 40 release. So they got their work cut out for them in testing. It's good stuff, though.
Yeah, apparently my dog's excited about it too. So
that's not coming through very loud for me. So it's doing a good job of muting that.
It's like anyway, I can hear him barking so pretty loudly. All right, with that, I think that's a wrap, Bart.
I believe it is. Have a great weekend, Dan. May the 4th be with you tomorrow, and we will talk in a couple weeks.
All right, take care. See you in a fortnight.